What have I not? So I give you my token gift. They call this small, they call this cheap, but I know you will appreciate. Ooh, yeah. I wish you a happy birthday. Ooh, yeah. Very, very many happy returns. Ooh, yeah. I wish you a happy birthday. Ooh.
Let us pray. O God of creation, direct our noble cause, guide our leaders right, help our youth the truth to know, in love and honesty to grow, and living just and true, great lofty heights attain, to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign. Amen.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today is 5th of June. Today is World Environment Day 2020. And today is also Engineer Boniface Wada's birthday, who is turning 77 today. Dr. Wada is a senior fellow of the Nigerian Society of Chemical Engineers and a pillar of the FCT Nasarawa Chapter of the society. Therefore, today we are celebrating World Environment Day and also celebrating Dr. Wada's birthday. Since 1974, World Environment Day has been celebrated every 5th of June as declared by the UN. The environment is very important to all of us because the food we eat, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the clothes we wear, our shelter, and the climate that makes our planet habitable all come from nature. Hence, the need for all of us to raise our voices in defense of the mother nature. The emergence of COVID-19 has underscored the fact that when we destroy biodiversity, we destroy the system that supports human life. By upsetting the delicate balance of nature, we have created ideal conditions for pathogens, including coronavirus, to spread. We engineers, on the other hand, play a very important role in the economic, social, and general well-being of mankind by harnessing natural resources to make life safer and more convenient for all. Living as we all know it today would not have been possible without engineering. Engineering play an important role in the provision of infrastructure, energy, medicine, communications, agriculture, etc. Hence, engineering has one of the biggest roles in biodiversity protection as we seek to obtain equilibrium living in harmony with nature. The theme of the World Environment Day 2020 is a call for urgent action to protect diversity. A call being answered by the NSChE FCT Nasarawa Chapter, starting with today's public lecture to raise our voices for the environment. Hence, the topic of the lecture today, biodiversity and resilience of ecosystem functions, the role of engineering, to be delivered by Dr. Ijeoma Vincent-Aku, an associate professor in the Department of Animal and Environmental Biology, University of Port Harcourt, Nigeria. She is also the coordinator for Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries Sectoral section of the International Association for Impact Assessment. She is also the secretary of Association for Environmental Impacts in Nigeria, which is an affiliate of the IAIA. She will be supported by 3 experts in key areas covered by this lecture, who are going to form the panel of discussants. We have Mr. Abbas Suleiman, who is a fellow of Nigerian Environmental Society, a director in the Environmental Assessment Department of the Federal Ministry of Environment. From the academia, we have Professor Oladipupo Ogunleye. He's a professor of chemical engineering in the Department of Chemical Engineering, Ladoke Akintola University. From the industry, we have Engineer Tukur Mohammed Lawal, who is a senior general manager in charge of environment and community affairs of Dangote cement plants globally. To chair this occasion is Engineer Onoche Anyako, fellow Nigerian Society of Chemical Engineers, fellow Nigerian Society of Engineers, and fellow Academy of Engineering. He is the national president of the Nigerian Society of Chemical Engineers, and he's going to be the chairman of this occasion. My name is Engineer Mamoud Abubakar, and I'm going to be your moderator. Mr. Chairman, I now hand over to you.
Thank you, Engineer Mamoud, our able and capable host. Colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Here in Nigeria.
Good morning.
I am especially privileged to chair this double-barreled occasion, which is one of which is the celebration of the birthday of a man I consider a mentor, who was there at the very early stages of my profession as a guide and a tutor. Dr. Wada, sir, congratulations on your 77th birthday. It has been a privilege to know and work with you for many, many years. It's also an honor to still be guided by you, even till today, as a very senior fellow of Nigerian Society of Chemical Engineers. Your contributions to the development of the profession in Nigeria is immense. Your passion for the profession and the proper career upbringing of young chemical engineers is unmatched. And for that, we all owe you immense gratitude. You can imagine the number of chemical engineers that passed through your tutelage in those early days. We all joined the Kaduna refinery. And you developed the training program by which we were all trained to the level of competence enabled us to, at that time, we remain quite indebted to you, and we wish you many, many, many more years of active life. The mind is still very sharp. As much as I struggle to keep up with most topics, you still lecture me. Yeah, congratulations. The second strand of today's event is the public lecture on ecosystems sustenance. It is without doubt that the challenges or the development of man has become and has always been a considerable assault on the ecosystems that support all of us, all living things in the world. Clearly, the carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere has been pushed more than 20-fold since industrialization started. Clearly, it has been a journey in which the needs of man have always pushed the needs of man and to develop in terms of prosperity and quality. Has always been in the lead before man realizes the extent of damage that such doing ecosystem that actually supports our lives and livelihood. So we have essentially been reactive, which means that we first do a damage to our life support systems, and then we try to contain, and we have not really been successful in repairing. However, it is becoming more obvious to all of us that continuing on this trajectory is undoubtedly going to lead to extinction. Hence the scramble to truly study and understand what damage our developmental needs have caused the ecosystem and how to fix such damage and at the same time evolve a developmental trajectory that is truly sustainable. A developmental trajectory that does minimal damage to the ecosystem. I believe the topic for today is one such effort to assist in deepening our knowledge of our ecosystems and evolving strategies on how to better manage our ecosystems in our quest for development and comfort. So on that note, I want to once again welcome you all to this epochal event, and I'm very certain that we'll all be fulfilled at the end of the event. Thank you all.
We also have today our guest speaker, Associate Professor Ijeoma Vincent-Aku, a very calm, articulate, and brilliant young lady, a very sharp professor by next year, inshallah, an Amazon of our time. Dr. Vincent Ijeoma is an environmental scientist and associate professor at the Department of Animal and Environmental Biology, University of Port Harcourt. She holds PhD in hydrobiology and with expertise in ecotoxicology, environmental impact assessment, coastal resources management, and ecosystem evaluation, with 20 years of teaching experience in the university. She is actively involved in EIA reviews. In fact, Mr. Abbas, who is here present, will attest to. He's also environmental. He also carries out several environmental studies in the Niger Delta, other parts of the country, and also in other countries. He's a trainer in ecosystem evaluation, environmental and nature studies for NGOs and community groups. This she does sometimes for free. She is currently the coordinator of agriculture, forestry, and fisheries sectoral group of the International Association for Impact Assessment. At the same time, she is the secretary of the Nigerian affiliate of that international organization, which is Association for Environmental Impact Assessment of Nigeria. She is a member of British Ecological Society and many other professional bodies. She is a Commonwealth Academic Fellow and has won many awards and fellowships that have taken her teaching and research expertise to other countries of the world. She's a constant face at many local and international forums where environmental issues are discussed. For Dr. Ijeoma just mentioned environment, you will see her like an ant and sugar. Mr. Chairman, thus I present to you your guest speaker of today.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to World Environment Day. My name is Dr. Ijeoma Vincent-Aku, Associate Professor at the Department of Animal and Environmental Biology, University of Port Harcourt. I'm honored and greatly delighted to be invited by Nigerian Society of Chemical Engineers, FCT and Nasarawa Chapter, to present a lecture on this day. My lecture is on biodiversity and resilience of ecosystem functions, the role of engineers. I have a brief outline. I'll talk about what is biodiversity, why biodiversity matters. We'll look at biodiversity ecosystem services, threats to biodiversity, resilience of ecosystem function, role of engineers for biodiversity. We'll also find out the missing link between engineering and biodiversity. Then finally, we'll close the gap between engineering and biodiversity. What is biodiversity or biological diversity? It has been defined by Convention on Biodiversity, Biological Diversity, as organism, all living organism present in a particular place, interacting with each other and with the environment. So we can say it's a variety of different types of organisms interacting in an ecosystem. And we need to understand their role and status. And that is what is necessary in maintaining functioning and resilient ecosystem. If you look at biodiversity, apart from being all living organisms here on Earth, we have to look at it based on the different organizations in it. We look at the genetic diversity, the species diversity, the ecosystem diversity. It starts with the genetic diversity, which is diversity within a species. That's the functional unit of heredity. It's the foundation for all biodiversity, which will allow them to adapt to the environment and take part in their life processes. Then we have the species diversity, which is a group of organisms that can interbreed in a particular area, interacting with each other and with the environment. Then we look at ecosystem diversity, which is a dynamic complex of living organisms interacting with each other and with their non-living elements, all interacting as a functional unit. We also have to look at biodiversity based on their characteristics. We look at the composition, the structure, and the function. When we talk about composition of biodiversity, we are looking at the identity, the list of organisms or the list of species present in a particular area. Then we look at their structure, which is the physical organization or pattern of that system. Then we look at the function, which is their life activities, what they do, how they interact with the physical environment. And it's from this their functioning that we can have ecosystem services, because they have to live, how they live with each other. Example of ecosystem functioning, we have the predator-prey system, nutrient recycling. We look at biodiversity in different ways. It's not a sum of all what I've mentioned. It's not the sum of genetic, species, ecosystem, or their composition. They all have to work together for us to have a better understanding of what biodiversity is all about. So if you look at biodiversity as their functioning, or they are carrying out their living activity or their life activity, they also provide ecosystem services to we humans. Apart from the direct benefits we get from them through production of food, water, medicine, energy, they also help us to regulate things happening on this earth. For example, they help in mitigating pollution, protecting the watershed, climate and disease control. They also support in purification of water, of air, pollination of crops. They also contribute to our spiritual and recreational benefits. But for the engineers, I want to add one particular one. Biodiversity is valuable in stimulating technological innovation and providing the framework for sustainable development. That's why they are very important. But however, despite all what they are doing, what is happening? Over 15,000 species are threatened with extinction. Over 700 species has become extinct in the wild since 15,000 AD. Currently, the rate of extinction is going as high as 100 to 10,000 times higher than the natural rate, which means approximately 1 out of 5 species is going on extinct every year. You can imagine what it's all about. Then if you look at forests, forests have disappeared in 25 countries. And 90% of these forests are lost in another 29 countries. Global biodiversity 2100. So you can imagine in the next 100 years, we might end up not having any biodiversity. According to international Conservation International, we have over 35 biodiversity hotspots. It's a region that contains over 1,500 species of plants, and out of that, within that place, they have lost 70% of its original habitats. This area was once covered, or it covers 16% of the Earth's surface. But today, 86% of these habitats have been destroyed. The next slide is the biodiversity hotspots in the world. And we can see Nigeria is still, we have some biodiversity hotspots towards the Niger Delta. What are the major threats to biodiversity? Habitat change. Habitats is being destroyed daily. They are lost or fragmented. And what happens? This biodiversity will not have a place to stay. If you look at what is happening, we are currently having coronavirus. What is happening? We have destroyed their habitats. And what do? They need to find a new host. And we are getting closer to where they live. Maybe that's why they were able, through their resilience, to jump into human beings. But I've not done any research on that, but I'm just saying, because we have destroyed their habitat, they need to find a new one. Other major threats can be invasive alien species, overexploitation of natural resources through fishing, hunting, pollution, when we have industrial, domestic emission all coming up. The natural ones can be climate change and global warming. Other threats can be underlying social, cultural condition. For example, increase in population growth. We have another one like biotechnology, biopiracy. All these things are major threats to biodiversity, amongst others. And what can we do? Globally, Convention of Biological Diversity have taken a step. First of all, they had a first global convention, which was in 1992. Nigeria became a party in 1994. In 1992, they have what we call the 2010 biodiversity targets, which they set for countries to try to reduce decline in biodiversity by the year 2010. And what happens? By the year 2010, nothing much was done. So they also agree that they should have and adopt strategic plan for biodiversity 2011 to 2020, and they encourage other countries to key into it. What is Nigeria doing about it? Nigeria is part of the country that have joined them since 1992. Let's look at what Nigeria is doing. In 2006, Nigeria launched their first National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan, but the implementation was not effective. They have also have so many other policy programs put in place. Let's see what they have been doing. This Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan was revised in 2015 to cover a period of 2016 to 2020. And what happened in 2020? When 2020, the status of biodiversity in Nigeria include a total loss of 309 threatened species, out of which we have 26 mammals, 19 birds, 8 reptiles, 13 amphibians, 60 fishes, 1 mollusk, 14 invertebrates, and 168 plants. But we shouldn't forget that mangrove in Nigeria is the 3rd largest area in the world. The mangrove forest is the 3rd largest in the world and the largest in Africa. What is happening to it? It's either being contaminated, degraded, or destroyed. So this is time for action. There is need for action. We know that biodiversity is crucial for maintaining healthy environments. We also know that biodiversity is humans' life support. Because if we destroy our life support, what happens to us? So what do? Given the value of biodiversity, its protection should be of immense concern to us. And what is the strategy we should use? We should try to look at how we can enhance ecological resilience and engineers playing their roles in ecology. So what is ecosystem resilience or eco-resilience? Is the capacity of ecosystems to resist disturbance and maintain their stability. So what do we need to do? Biodiversity need to sustain the existing ecosystem services by building up their resilience. If not, they can go into extinct or they decline. And what we can say, a resilient ecosystem can better withstand shock, rebuild itself without collapsing, and still continue to give us ecosystem services they've been providing. And we need to know that functional diversity and response diversity are important to maintain ecological resilience. Functional diversity. When you cut a field or trees, what happens? You have, or if you remove a species that has one functional role, what happens if we don't have another organism replacing it? That role is lost. So they need to maintain functional diversity to be able to cope and also to be resilient in other disturbance. We also need to look at their response. For example, if you take a forest, a resilient forest will respond to sustain the existing ecosystem services it's providing without the threshold being reached, which forest will cross its threshold, leading to a new forest type, but still maintain the primary ecosystem service. Another response can be they can cross the threshold, leading to a new forest type, but the change, that's the disturbance, will be so much for it that the ecosystem services delivery will decline. And the last response can be they will cross the threshold and they will transform into a non-forest type, losing the function and the ability to provide most of the ecosystem services. Can quantify ecosystem resilience, but it's always difficult to measure. But we can use the different resilience to do that individually or collectively. We can use resistance, which is the magnitude of change in ecosystem services caused by disturbance. We can also use recovery, which is measured in recovery rates or recovery time, which is the time taken for each variable to return to their pre-disturbance value. We can also look at the net change, which can be measured by comparing each variable at the end of the disturbance with the pre-disturbance value. Other metrics we can use can be stability, variability, persistence, robustness. But we should have in mind that systems with shorter recovery times are more resilient than those with longer recovery time, which we can say should be a measure of resilience. But there are limitations in ecosystem resilience. Maybe that's why it's not too common. They always try to incorporate it in environmental management policy, but this was always will increase the risk of what? Misuse. When disturbance comes, it will always come, it can be sharp or subtle, and that will affect the chain, and that will affect the measurements. The randomness nature of disturbance can make it difficult for us to predict. And when disturbance comes, it doesn't act separately. They interact. For example, you cut a field, there's climate change of you measure resilience, you have to look at it on multi-dimensional, and measuring resilience require complex model, simulation, and projections. But we are in a group of engineers. And what are we doing? We are creating a new role for engineers because they must play a very good role in helping conserve our biodiversity. The initial role engineers were doing is they use technology inspired by nature and biodiversity for the benefits of humanities. That's what we're doing all this while. We use it to do things that will benefit humanities. But what happens to biodiversity doing all this? The initial role also involved overuse of fossil fuel, and it requires intensive maintenance because they are out of balance with nature. But now we try to bring a new role for engineering. Engineering will be used, they will use the knowledge of nature and biodiversity function for the benefits of biodiversity and also for humans. They should rely more on natural energy flow, which is solar-based, which often require low maintenance when connected. So the new role for engineers is for them to be inspired by nature, work for the benefit of biodiversity. So we need to find the difference in engineering and biodiversity. We have different kinds of engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, but we should find the link between it, which is ecology. So if we work in constant with ecology, we won't have much problem with biodiversity, and that's where we have ecological engineering. Let's say ecotechnology. What does it involve? It involves using engineering design for sustainable ecosystem that will integrate human society with engineering, with natural processes, which will benefit both the biodiversity and humans. Ecological engineering is not a new word. It has been coined by Odun since 1960. And what does it make? It takes its root in the field of ecology. So engineers need a better understanding of ecological concepts and limitations in their daily practice. And what do? We combine ecosystem function with human needs, which is the FNSChE for ecological engineering. They may have to make use of technology, which is a powerful tool for conserving biodiversity and improving human life. So when we link conserving biodiversity and improving human, that is what ecological engineering, which will help us to improve human life. So now, biodiversity problem, there's a solution. Who can do that is the engineers. So they know the problem, they have the solution. So this is time to start. We have some to-do lists that they can do. We know that technology is a powerful tool for improving human life. So what do? We have to copy the self-sustaining nature of the earth, which is self-sustaining of mother nature, or they should emulate ecological process. We should study ecosystem process, energy flow, and where energy comes from the sun, which can go to the. You can also look at the way nature recycle materials. It can be a way to reduce our waste. We have something they call circular economy, where waste is being used and reused, start wasting it. We should also have a system that should tolerance without destroying ecological balance. In aquaculture, we have multi-species, where you put different species of fish to promote aquaculture. Have a complex food chain and food web where one eats the other, reducing waste in aquaculture. And also use existing ecosystem, modify it in such a way, an ecological sound way, to solve environmental problem. For example, we have problem waste. You can create artificial waste wetland or wastewater lake, where we can use knowledge of ecosystem to work on the waste and decompose it in such a way that it will not cause problem to the environment. We can also imitate ecosystem process, which can help us to resolve or resource problem. If you destroy wetland, allowed to do the same process in the environment. Also adapt or look at biodiversity so that we can replicate it in our design to solve problems in nature. For example, if you look at termites in their mode, how do they regulate temperature? This is something we can use to regulate temperature. So finally, ecology as a science should be integrated into engineering. We can also landscape land planning to complete natural eco for extension of habitats. We can provide nature engineering solutions. For example, we have wildlife bridges, tunnels, where you can human use process, they can work hand in hand. You can also convert some of the degraded lands to expand agriculture using technological means instead of destroying new forests. The ones that are degraded, or when a industrial process they have finished, like mining, we can convert this degraded land for agricultural use instead of having new forests. Also process waste from used materials instead of buying new ones. Most of the waste we discard can get out useful waste products from them, which we can reuse instead of mining. Engineering profession and biodiversity have been designing products that can reduce harmful greenhouse gases and also develop long-term alternative to wood. We can design structures that function in form and in cost. We can design buildings that have more energy efficient. Mechanical and chemical engineers can produce clean energy. All this will help to reduce on biodiversity. Can work, design and develop eco-friendly products or bio-friendly technology. For example, we have bioplastics. There are so many materials that have been packaged. There's this one they use to help to conserve and preserve the ecosystem. We can develop pesticides for agricultural use and prey predator system from nature. In conclusion, engineers want science help them solve environmental problems. Likewise, environmental scientists are losing out in the engineering approach in their problem. So engineers need a better understanding of ecological concepts and ecosystem functioning in their practice. And ecology as a science should be integrated into engineering curricula and vice versa. I want to say thank you for this opportunity to present this, and I hope that the engineers will make use of the available to them to make our environment a better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ijeoma, for the wonderful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, you agree with me. We didn't expect nothing less, and she has delivered beyond our expectations. Now, to follow this, we have 3 discussants. But before I introduce them, Dr. Ijeoma clearly highlighted key roles that engineering is expected to play in biodiversity protection, which are like constraints that engineers need to take into account during their design. So, after the introduction, Engineer Abbas will speak first as a regulator, because regulatory requirements are also additional constraints. The 2 chemical engineers in the house, one from the academia and the other one from the industry, will respond as to how these constraints are being addressed or how engineering intend to address them going forward.
Without taking over the role of the discussants that are going to drill into all the issues she has raised, I want to say that listening to this presentation has raised several germane issues with respect to our developmental trajectory, specifically in Nigeria, especially with the Niger Delta being flagged as a hotspot. That means that we should try not to pay lip service to biodiversity and ecosystems management in our country. It is rather unfortunate that despite its importance, I have not seen an issue of legislation mentioned with respect to how to domesticate and activate the implementation of all the strategies that she has listed. Perhaps the discussants can expand on that, because I believe that in a democracy, the way you get things done are generally through legislations, both at the federal level and even particularly at the state, where these sensitivities are most prevalent. If we want to protect the Niger Delta ecology and biodiversity, then we should be seeing stringent laws in conservation and protection of biodiversity of Niger Delta, start right from the state that envelope the Niger Delta and up to the federal level, akin to the international knowledge base and treaties. I also found the aspect of integrating, in fact, it's a gap that she has highlighted. You know, engineers tend to work in silos, whereas real-life solutions are based on multidisciplinary collaboration. That means that expertise in ecology should be integrated in all engineering solutions, right from the concept stage to the design stage to execution, and right through to the life cycle and retirement of projects. We cannot understate that if we are to get it right. I don't see how engineers can become experts like Dr. Ijeoma. All they have to do is her type should be the guide at every stage throughout the life cycle of projects. I like the idea that curriculum should be adjusted for engineers to get appreciation of biodiversity and ecology, but it will never make them experts like Dr. Ijeoma. So I believe we should find ways to work collaboratively to protect our habitat and our ecology, which sustains our lives. It cannot be overstated. So once again, thank you. And Mamoud, over to you. Introduce it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Without wasting much of time, I want to invite the first discussant to present. That's the Dr. Ijeoma's paper now has shown clearly what the issues are and what needs to be done. So the next thing logically is to hear the regulatory aspects, the policy framework in dealing with those issues. Then, immediately after Mr. Abbas, the two engineers will now come and tell us, after listening to what Professor Ijeoma said and this thing, what engineering is either doing about it or what we should be doing differently. So, Mr. Abbas, you have the you have the floor.
Okay. Good afternoon, all. And congratulations to our celebrants, the chief celebrants, Engineer Fata, and our chief lecturer, Professor Ijeoma. Let me not dwell the very educating. My interest talk largely on the regulatory aspects. But before I do that, I want to, go a little bit into history and go a little bit into history to tell us how where we are today, especially as it relates to you chemical engineers. From Professor lecture, we can see that I want to a little bit into this. There's an echo from my end. From Professor Ijeoma's lecture, we can see that if the world began to suffer biodiversity loss, circa 15,000 AD, and that coincides with about the time the world was getting ready for the Industrial Revolution, which actually started in 1640 something thereabout with Stephen Watt's steam engine. But the major incident that brought environmental protection matters to the front burner in the world was the clash between ecologists and chemical engineers. You all recall Richard Carson's Silent Spring, in which she was able to observe that the rate at which industrialization was going on in the United States, where chemicals were being spilled all over the place. You know, you have large chemical companies like DuPont and the Dow Chemical Group. At a time will come, there will be no birds chirping and singing during spring. That would have been a very major biodiversity loss. Attempts by chemical companies to stifle Richard Carson's book only made the issue more topical and more enlightening, to the point that the environmental movement started. The United States brought out their NEPA Act, which we can say is a precursor to EEA acts that we all have all over the world today. But we should also give kudos to the engineers, because it is still these same chemical companies that came together to decide to fund the environmental movement. And where we are today, we wouldn't have been there if most of the large engineering companies did necessary support through the Business Council on Sustainable Development to the environment group. Culminating in NEPA Act was the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in 1972, followed by the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in 1992, in which the Convention on Biodiversity was can I be, if I'm being hard, could you just wave, let me see? Okay. All right, thank you. Right. So the 1992 conference gave room for the Convention on Biodiversity. And after that, every year there has always been conference of parties where the whole world biodiversity regulatory authorities meet to decide what the next action should be. One can say that in Nigeria, there are several regulatory instruments that helps us to protect our biodiversity. They are scattered, here and there, beginning with our own indigenous ways of protecting our biodiversity. In the past, in every village, you have what you call the evil forest, where nobody is supposed to touch. The trees are left intact. Gives an indication of what the biodiversity used to be. In some savanna areas, you will see remnants of those forests, and it tells you that these were heavily rainforested areas in the past. So when governance took proper shape with the advent of colonialism, a lot of forest reserves set out by gazettes, some game reserves, and these are areas where we still have a lot of biodiversity, within which no development can come in. You have laws like the National Parks Law, the Sea Fisheries Act, the Territorial Waters Act, and of course the Environmental Impact Assessment Act, which I always want to say is the beginning of the laws, is the door to every other law. when a major engineering project is to be embarked upon, the EIA process gives an opportunity for the planners to be able to assess the area and check their biodiversity status vis-a-vis the IUCN Red List. If there are any traces of endangered or threatened species in that area, of course, that is a red flag. You will not be able to establish this facility that you plan there. The major law that we have today that is protecting biodiversity is the one we call the CITES law. It's Decree 11 of 1985. That's the Endangered Species Decree. It was coined to prevent trade in endangered animals, but looking at it within a wider context, the law has a list of endangered plants and animals that are protected by Nigerian statutes. And when EIA reports are brought, we also always make sure that in the biodiversity aspect, any of those threatened species as listed by Prof that are observed there by way of maybe even markings or historically are flagged out for greater review, whereby if there are evidences of them, then we have every right to deny the project the opportunity to be started. I will want to also say that before we began to really put some of these practices, before we began to codify them into laws, like the Environmental Impact Assessment Act, for instance, which came in 1992, but actual practice started in 1995. Engineers in Nigeria, in the course of their engineering projects, had always taken some measures that were designed to conserve biodiversity. It's just that there was no synergy with the environmental people for it to be so to be so labeled. A good example is when you build dams like the Kanji Dam, the Jeba Dam, Shiroro Dam, and what have you. These are huge engineering projects that inundate very large areas. I remember that one of the mitigation measures that is carried out by engineers then is to cut the vegetation 100 meters from the bank of the river. By doing that, you allowed animals to be able to move to higher ground. The cut vegetations were given to the villagers, which hitherto would have increased our climate change impact from the methane that will be generated when water now covers these plants. But nobody ever saw them as, an environmental mitigation measure to dam impoundment. But engineers, were practically able to, develop these measures. And there are several other ones. If we look into previous engineering practices in Nigeria, maybe the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, where you have almost an 8-kilometer elevated ramp bridge, rather than sand filling and then fragmenting the ecosystem in that area. These are a few examples, so to say, that I can say in the past engineers had introduced into their projects without having us environmental people asking them to do that. So increased synergy between engineers and environment, I think, should be the way forward, especially now in these COVID times, that due to stresses that environment industrialization is putting on life generally, life forms, they are evolving in different ways that we are finding difficult to grapple with. Having said this much, let me pause here and then hear from other discussants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abbas. Mamoud. Mamoud has disappeared once again.
I'm with you, sir.
Please, can you, the next discussant, is it Professor Ogunleye or Tukur?
Professor, yes. Professor Oladipupo, do you have a slide?
Yes.
Or you are talking from like Abbas?
Yeah, I've shared my slide.
Okay.
Hello?
You shared your slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Just hold on. Let me bring your slide up.
Okay.
We can see his slide.
Okay.
So,
can I go on?
Professor Oladipupo, you are live now. You can shoot.
Yeah, thank you, Engineer Mamoud. Once again, I want to join others to congratulate our father in the profession, Engineer Wada, on his 78th birthday. And I want to thank our national president for gracing the occasion. I also want to thank Dr. Ijeoma for that wonderful presentation. I'm going to be introducing engineering perspective to our discussion this afternoon. First of all, I want us to look at the whole system, the ecosystem that we have been discussing from engineering perspective. If we are looking at ecosystem from engineering perspective, Prof. Yes, sir.
Prof. Yeah, can you do PowerPoint presentation?
Okay.
Just go to where the slide is and do it like the way you just present on the screen outside.
On the presentation mode. Put it on presentation mode.
Put it on presentation mode.
Okay. Is that okay? Is it okay?
Not yet.
Is there already?
Yeah, if you put it on presentation mode, you can continue.
Yes, it's already on
Because
presentation mode.
Depending on, yes, no, it's not. Just continue if you put it in presentation mode. Sometimes depending on network, depending on quality of network, it takes some time before the feed will start coming in. But you can continue.
Thank you so much. I said, if you look at our ecosystem from engineering perspective, we can look at the whole system like a reaction system. And if we are looking at it like a reaction system, we all know fundamentally from our basic knowledge of science. Hello? Are you hearing me?
Go ahead. Go ahead. We're hearing you. Go ahead.
Okay, sir. Now, from our basic knowledge of chemistry, if we are looking at the environment, the ecosystem as a reaction system, Le Chatterley told us that when a dynamic system is in equilibrium, when it is disturbed by changing a particular condition there, the position of the equilibrium will move in order to counter the changes that has happened. And this can summarily summarize everything that we have been talking about, and that will give us some engineering insight into what we are discussing. Now, if you look at our world as a reaction system that has been stable, that has not been experiencing different challenges before, as a result of so many things that Dr. Ijeoma mentioned, man begins to disturb the system through the depletion of resources. Bigger animal begins to consume the smaller ones. Environmental pollution begins to emerge from our different activities. We keep on increasing our population without corresponding provision in the environment. Definitely, it gets to a point where the system will have to react in order to return to its state. And what are the consequences of the reaction that we have seen? In our community today, there is a level of poverty due to so many factors. There is climate change, which the whole world is grappling with. There is environmental degradation everywhere. Our chairman talked about Niger Delta. They have been talking of reclamation and remediation since we have not seen things going on. Even if it goes on, it takes years before the environment can be returned. There is economic recession as a result of the distortion in the system. And eventually we have low standard of living. As a result of that, that's shortening the lifespan of people because of pollution, because man that is creating this problem is also part of the ecosystem. Now, having said this, there is a new world order expectation from us, from the whole world, and that is what we call the Sustainable Development Goal. If you look at this 17 Sustainable Development Goal that were presented that is being targeted against 2030, you will see that there are about 10 of them that has to do with engineering directly or indirectly. If you look at the Goal 2, which has to do with zero hunger, there is no way we can conquer hunger unless we produce massively. And when we produce massively, where do we do that? We impact on the ecosystem. The other one is the third one, good health and well-being. How can there be good health and well-being where there are no healthy environment? We need to look at that. There is Goal 6. There is Goal 7. There is Goal 8, Goal 9, Goal 11, Goal 12, 13, 14, and 15. These are the United Nations targets to find a way to mitigate against the way the world system is reacting to the disturbance that has been imposed on it, either by man or by other elements of the ecosystem. Now, what are those activities that endanger biodiversity, like Dr. Ijeoma mentioned? Some of these activities are here as listed. Now, the consequences of some of them, we have the climate change, we have the ozone depletion, we have the acidification and its impact on soil and water, we have the abiotic resources depletion potentials. All of them are there due to depletion, the extractive activities that we do. We explore oil, they exploit mineral, solid minerals, and all of the rest. All of these things create some abiotic resources depletion all over the places. As a result of our industrial activity and agricultural activity, we have the ecotoxicity. Everybody is spraying herbicide. People are making use of fertilizers. And studies have shown that when you apply fertilizer, it's only about 30% of what you apply that will be used. The remaining will find its way into the underground water. And eventually it ends up either in the belly of animals or in human being as a result of leaching and all the rest that goes on under the ground. The other things that are disturbing this thing are the emerging technologies. You have bad technologies through which we want to modify the gene of one to the other in the course of manipulating the original species. They are being wiped out. You have genetic engineering, all of them are there, and agricultural activities are there. Now, having said all of this, what are we supposed to do and where are we as engineers? Now, I have said earlier on that there are some fundamental problems challenging our system. To summarize what Dr. Ijeoma said, the expanding population is there, and these are putting pressure on the natural resources and the biodiversity. Changing environment is going on every day as a result of our industrial activities. Depleting of resources is there through extractive activities, mining, drilling, felling of logwood, and all of those things that we do. The volatile economy results from some of these. Increased human impact everywhere is there, and so many other uncertainties that are going on. What are we supposed to do as engineers? There are 5 basic things that seems to be the focus of what engineers should concentrate upon. And if you look at the figure that is before us, the first thing is, in all of this, with this biodiversity, because our population is increasing, our environment is changing, our world is changing, everything is changing all around us. Yet, there must be sustainable supply of food, water, and energy. These are basic needs of life. Now, where do we come in as engineers? Today, I may mention in terms of food supply, we all know now that the issue of peasant farming is no more profitable, and so many people are migrating into what we call mechanized farming. And mechanized farming comes with its attendant consequences. You go to do the bush clearing, you bring down the trees, you bring down all manners of things, you match the structure of the ground, exposing it to erosion and all manners of things. How do we do this in a more engineering way? Outside that, people try to enhance productivity by application of fertilizer. You look at the fertilizer in its traditional form as it used to be. People do broadcasting, people do points application, but you see, findings have shown us that only about 30% of those things that are applied are actually utilized by the plant. The rest find their way into the ground, and consequently into the groundwater, and consequently they pollute the quality of water that we live with. Now, but there are so many engineering approaches that are going on. Now there is the emergence and the expansion of nanotechnology that is going on, that is being championed by engineering, wherein chemical engineering are playing very prominent role. What do we do in nanotechnology? What we do now is, we know nanotechnology, nano means -9. We are talking about reducing the size of what we toil with. If you look at how people, the new emerging technology on the application of nanotechnology in agriculture now is the normal nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium that are the essential ingredients that are being used in agriculture are normally introduced into these nanomaterials. And how do we choose these nanomaterials? We bear in mind the first principle I made mention of, which is the Le Chatelain principle. We need to look at materials that are similar to the ground where these things will be applied. These are going to be the vehicle for the production of the nanoparticle. That is going to be the carrier of all of these elements. The issue is that once there is equilibrium between the material carrier of the fertilizer component and the ground that is there, the rest is left for chemistry. You know, when two systems are in equilibrium, then you know that the mass transfer there is near to zero. So in such a case, the plant has direct access and absolute, the materials are almost 100% available for the plant. So in such a way, we begin to reduce the menace of fertilizer pollution through leaching, and thereby we increase what we call the agricultural output. There are other emerging ways for water treatment that are going on. These are some of the areas where engineers are coming to play. Now, our water are being polluted every time. Now, there are emerging technologies where engineers, especially chemical engineers, are coming to play to find a way to integrate into this system in order to make potable water more available. Because from findings, it is also said that about 70% of the water availability is directly to agricultural activities. Now, if all these things goes to agricultural activities, and there are these challenges that I've mentioned over there, then we do know that there are potential problems that are bound to emanate from some of these agricultural activities that we are involved in. And that is why some of this new technology, especially nanotechnology, is becoming handy and useful in doing some of these things. Not only that, those materials will be available because there will be equilibrium either between the zeolite that is being used as the carrier for the material and the soil. You can replant whatever you want to replant there after harvesting, because when you evaluate at the end of the day, leaching from those substances will have been almost zero. So these are some of the emerging technologies that are available for us to use in that. The other thing is the issue of energy. We all know that the energy has contributed the greatest portion of the greenhouse gas emission by the virtue of the burning of fossil fuel, generating system, and so many other activities that we are involved in. But the new emerging technology is now moving towards what we call the renewable energy sources. If you go through the landscape of Europe, we see the windmill everywhere. We see the windmill everywhere, which is one of those things that we have not been exploiting in Nigeria, especially looking at the terrain in the northern part of Nigeria. This can favorably favor some of these things. The solar energy is coming up, and all of these things are going up. Now, the issue is this. The other engineering aspect I want to say is this. You know, whenever we are looking at the economic value of an activity, we should also look at the environmental impact of the activity and so many other factors. And there is an aspect of engineering that is called optimization. This will help us to bring all the factors together, setting our priorities and finding the best way of harnessing all the resources together in order to minimize the detrimental effect of whatever activity we want to do to the minimal point. So I think these are some of the areas where engineering are coming to play. And like Dr. Ijeoma said, she said we need the knowledge of environmentalists and all other people that are involved. Well, I want to say from the beginning, engineering has always been proactive in this. Like when you look at the issue of design, design is always a teamwork. It's not one engineer that will do design of any plant. It is the combination of so many professionals. You even have people in economy and all the rest involved in some of these things, so that everybody can actually put their view. The only thing is that the engineer is going to be the arrowhead in order to get this thing done. So the first thing, which I believe areas where engineers will need to begin to bring out some of these new technologies that I've mentioned, is in the area of sustainable supply of food, water, and energy, which are basic and crucial to our system if we are going to survive. We need food as human beings, we need water, we need energy. How are we going to harness these three things in such a way that it will not impact negatively on our environment? These are some of the things that we need to do. And having brought up all the issues surrounding it, the next or the final level of what we normally do is to find a way to optimize all the resources in order to minimize the hazardous or the detrimental effect of such. The next thing is the design a future without pollution or waste. Designing a future without pollution of waste. This is also come from what Dr. Ijeoma said. Now, we are looking at, if you look at America, for instance, industrial waste, or let's say industrial contribution to greenhouse emission is about 22%. And if you go to some other areas all over the world, they have varied degree of percentages of contribution. Now, what do we need to do? This is what engineering has been doing, but now we need to do more. Why do we need to do more? Because there are new emerging factors all around us that have not been captured maybe previously in what we used to do. Those challenges have not been there before, but now they are emerging. We need to start integrating them into some of our design principles in such a manner that we will produce virtually no waste. And what do you mean by virtually no waste? The new trend in design is that we are creating value from waste. If you go to people in agricultural engineering, what they do, they don't call anything waste. They call it agricultural residue. Those are the things that we call waste. Why is it residue? Because they have found usage for most of these things, either in making composting, either in generating maggot that will feed the aquaculture, and some of those things. These are some of the things that are emerging, and all of these new technologies are emerging. But in all of it too, the other area, like I've emphasized before, is the area of optimizing the integrated system. Now, there is no system that operates in isolation. There are so many factors to them. And that is why in chemical engineering, when we do design, we say we don't do a dead-end design. We do a design that is flexible, that we can actually manipulate or we can actually change in order to suit new environmental challenges. So in order to get all of these things done, optimization technology are available that people are venturing into. The next one, which is our challenge and what we should be looking at, is curbing climate change and to adapt to its impact. Now, you see, the cost of prevention is always lower than the cost of curation. Our president made mention of Niger Delta. It would have been better if such pollution there has not occurred. And how would they not occur? That will have been taken care of properly from the design system, incorporating other emerging factors that were not there when those things were being designed, but that are now emerging. And those are the new challenges that we are facing. Now, how do we mitigate against this climate change? There are few new technologies that are emerging that engineering are bringing to play. Let me quickly mention two for us so that we will see how they are. First of all, the conventional thing is through the agricultural activity. Mr. Abbas made mention of creating the forests that will absorb some of the CO2 so that they can be converted. Thereby, we bring down the issue of ozone depletion and climate change. The greenhouse gas emission will reduce it because there will be more gas, more plants, more trees to absorb the CO2 and get it used in the plant to something productive. But that one has a challenge. The challenge now is that we now begin to encounter what we call land shortages. You agree with me, the size of land that was available for us to play with in the last 20 years is no more what is available now. And when you go to our cities, hello,
Prof.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, random.
Okay. When you go to our cities, when you go to our cities, you discover
we still have time for Q&A, so those additional clarifications can be made.
Okay.
Just skip through and
let's look at design for the future. Some of those design that we have now is bioenergy for carbon capture and sequestration. Is the new technology that is emerging. We also have what we call direct air capture and sequestration of carbon. These are new technology that are being used to reduce CO2 emission in the system. The next thing is to create efficient, healthy, and resilient cities. This has to do with some of our engineering activities that we need to do. Maybe when you get to question, I can go into details of what are the emerging technologies that are going on. The last thing, which is very crucial, is to foster informed decision and action. This is where the problem always lies. Our chairman said the other time that we have not seen enough of legislations. The issue is, how can we make legislation without informed facts? There are so many things that we just go ahead, we rush into, and without knowing the nitty-gritties of what is going on. Part of what we need to begin to look at now is how to bring everybody, the ecologists, the environmental engineers, the process engineers, the economic people, bringing everybody together before we arrive at a particular legislation. Because looking at the environment doesn't have one face. Environment has a lot of faces. As you are solving one problem from one side, you may discover that you are creating another problem from the other side. These are the daunting challenges of what we need to do. Well, my closing remark is that the environmental engineering that used to center on public health and sanitation is no more sufficient. Now we should begin to look at the new grand challenges that are emerging, and we should begin to incorporate them into what we are doing. So we need to expand our scope, just like Dr. Ijeoma said. We need not to focus on individual problems, but we need to begin to view all these environmental problems in a systemic manner, in an integrated manner, looking at their interrelationship and seeing how we can bring one to solve the other, and not to create problem by solving one and leaving the other. So I want to end up by using this quote. It was made by Chris Massa. He said, when we are doing what we are doing to the forest of the world is but a mirror reflection of what we are doing to ourselves and to one another. If we damage the environment, we are damaging ourselves. If we work for the environment, we are working for ourselves. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Oladipupo. So Tukur was supposed to speak next before we take a Q&A. Unfortunately, we lost him. IK and Co are trying to bring him back. So while we are waiting for that, there's some people that drop questions on the platform. Before Tukur will come in, maybe I'll give an opportunity to those that are still remaining in the room to either make contributions or to ask a question. Engineer Onugu. Engineer Onugu. Your mic is muted, Engineer Onugu. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay. The question.
Hold on.
Yes.
Nobody is hearing you. Hold on first. Let me put you up. Ask question. Engineer Onugu, you are on.
Okay, fine. Professor Ogunleye.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
thank you for your discussion. I am particularly interested about what you said on the fertilizer, about the fertilizer.
Yes, sir.
That only about 30% of the component of the fertilizer is utilized by the plant. The rest,
yes, sir.
Yeah, the rest is washed away. Finally, yes, to the underground. My question is this: without using a new technology, the nanotechnology, is it possible to identify the remaining 70%? What are the components of this fertilizer? The 70%, that are leached away, so that without application of nano technology, right? We can just concentrate. We can just concentrate, the fertilizer with this very 30% component.
Now, okay, thank you, sir. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Yes. Now, the issue is, there are various. Okay,
Prof,
are you listening?
Hold on, you are not live. It's only those of us that are inside the room that can hear you now. Let me put you live before you speak.
Okay, sir.
Prof, you are live now. You can speak.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now, there are various categories of fertilizer. We have the NPK fertilizer. We have the nitrate fertilizer. There are so many of them. Now, the issue is this: in any particular fertilizer, there is a particular quantity. Hello? Hello?
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'm hearing you.
Yeah, in that quantity of fertilizer that is applied, take for instance nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium that is applied there. When you apply maybe 20 grams of fertilizer to your maize stand, when you apply 20 grams of fertilizer to your maize stand, The NPK in it, is roughly about, say, 45% of that 20 grams. The remaining are the fillers, the carriers. Hello?
Yeah.
There
Go
is
ahead.
noise.
Go ahead. Yeah.
The remaining are the fillers that are involved.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, from our experience, that 45%, 45 grams that is there, only 30% of it gets to be absorbed by your plants. The remaining 70% are being washed away as leach. The remaining 70% are being washed away as leachate. Why? Because of the type of carrier that is being used to carry them. So what the new technology is doing is to bring similarity index into place. When we use materials that are similar to the ground where it's applied, they tend to be in equilibrium with one another. And because that equilibrium, the mass transfer between the ground and the fertilizer component is minimized. So you have the roots of your plant embedded into it. It uses what it wants to use. The remaining percentage remain on that spot without being washed away. So when you want to plant other seasons, you may not necessarily need to apply fertilizer because that component remain there as a result of not going into the system. It is being tested now on large scale. We have tried pilot scale, large, huge results. So we are test running mechanized now.
Dr. Wada, you are live.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Sorry, I'm not supposed to speak. I was told, but I want to make a contribution.
One moment, sir. It was during the other event. You know, we did party somewhere. It was during that party that you are not supposed to talk.
Okay.
We've moved in the lecture hall now.
Okay.
And looking at the people that describe you as a VC professor, you are also a professor. How can somebody say that you cannot talk inside the classroom, inside the lecture hall?
I was trying to avoid paying penalty.
No. No. You will not be penalized. You can speak, sir.
You see, the idea of changing our curricula, we can continue changing the curricula, adding new items onto the curricula until everybody begin to study everything. Chemical engineering started with 32 subjects. It had improved down over the years to what we now know. So in other countries, people, in order to be effective, people are studying more than one discipline. They are chemical engineers, they become financial gurus and so on. That is also another way to go. Another way also is for us to work together. Even though we have Nigerian Society of Engineers, but when it comes to practice, we don't seem to work together. So they pulling together on a project, you'll have all disciplines of engineering. I know very well our colleagues in the Ministry of Environment who have not found a role because they said there's no role for chemical engineers here. They couldn't classify them because the civil service rules does not specify a chemical engineer in the environment. We had to fight that. So now we come to research. Our research has to be focused because here the president going to international meetings and saying Lake Chad is drying up, needs to bring water, maybe from the Congo into the, but we have floods in Bono area, bordering the Lake Chad. We have floods there. there is something called water harvesting. If you go to Israel, they have limited water, you know, and the entire area, it's like you know, greenhouse. They utilize the water. We you know, so really, I think it's one thing to study whatever, but another thing to apply that study to solve human problems. Our research should be focused on the problems that we have. The diversity that we're talking about, there are many problems. From the lecture, guest lecturer, I could identify so many areas that even we chemical engineers should play. But everybody focused on what? Petroleum. I used to ask chemical engineering, synonymous with the petroleum engineering. I mean, why can't we look outside the box? So I just want to make this so that you know, we're talking about Mr. Abbas. I like that we do have laws, but laws are not obeyed. Let's talk about enforcement. We have to enforce the laws. Otherwise, there's no point. I tell National Assembly, they can go on holiday because we have too many laws. Who checks whether drivers are driving on red light in Abuja? Nobody. So we have to be, if we want to be successful, we have to behave like human beings behave worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have many more questions? Or
Can I make a small contribution?
yeah, please go ahead, Abbas.
Okay. The professor, yes, he talked about legislation not being enough. Well, at the risk of sounding, we have legislation.
Mr. Abbas.
Yes.
I was talking to you. I did not realize that my this thing is muted.
Okay.
And take note of what Dr. Wada said. We also have about 3 questions or 4 that were submitted by people from the audience. We can't see them. I will be able to see the questions that are dropping, but I can also see them. Let's take those questions so that there are some for you. Okay. You join with the one for Dr. Wada.
It's okay.
Now, this one is coming from Engineer John Yakubu. He said that I live in Abuja. Before the expansion of the airport road, we have trees lined up on both sides of that road. Because I live in Lugbe, I'm also aware there was an environmental impact assessment. What happened that those trees were not replanted after the construction of the road?
Expansion of the road.
Then he made additional statement, which as a moderator I edited, because just to present the meaning, because there are some words there that cannot be published on air. So what he's saying in essence is that the disappearance of those trees by the roadside, engineers should not be held culpable, because their own is to build the road. There are other stakeholders that involved that are supposed to be responsible for planting those trees. So maybe Engineer Abbas, you will be able to throw more light on issues with respect to that road. There's also a second one that is relevant to you. this one is anonymous, and by the nature of the question, I will quite reasonably understand why it remains anonymous. I work with a state ministry of works, and in most cases, when we are doing projects, a department in the ministry sometimes will not even know what another department is doing. If engineers are to safeguard the environment, how can we have interministerial team running project to ensure sustainability? Is there any law or any regulation that you can assist with that I can take back to my organs in the ministry? So you can address those now. There are other questions I think more suited for Dr. Ijeoma and the Professor Oladipupo. So before you speak, Abbas, I need to put you back live. Mr. Abbas, you are live, you can speak now.
Okay, thank you very much. The question from our eminent personality, Dr. Wada, on enforcement, I think in a similar vein, he had also helped by answering the question, you know, by emphasizing that we lack enforcement in Nigeria. And the reason why most of our laws are not enforced is largely maybe out of a cultural thing, why as Nigerians we relish in breaking laws. Take the example that he gave about those that break the red lights and people not being out there.
Tell him on phone that if he has a PowerPoint, he should do share screen and hold it so that I'll put him up.
Okay. So there are enough, well, not that laws can always be enough, but the ones that we have, every law have sections and statutes on enforcement. Some of these enforcements are executed by environmental agencies. Others are enforced by public health authorities. Some are even enforced by the engineering regulatory agencies themselves. We are not doing it now, but
you just talk from okay. So that's great. It even makes things easier.
With self-regulation, self-discipline, a lot of enforcement of our laws can be better seen in future. And let me talk about the tree planting along the airport road. Yes, I have stayed in Abuja long enough to witness when those trees were planted, and at the same time, I have noticed, sadly though, that when the road was expanded, the trees have not been replanted. It could be, let me say, it's a planning failure ab initio, because that road was designed to be a 10-lane expressway, and when we had just the 2 lanes on both sides, trees were immediately planted at the sides of the road. It came with a lot of challenges then. Anytime there was a major rainstorm in Abuja, you know that a lot of vehicles have been crashed. People lost their lives from those trees that the heavy rainstorms fell. Yes, came the expansion. And I think that maybe hopefully Abuja is a plant city. The areas that are supposed to be revegetated will be carried out by the city authorities as we progress. Now that the Honorable Minister of Environment, Dr. Mamoud Abubakar, has promised Nigerians. Incidentally, he has also a presentation today in another webinar to mark the World Environment Day. He has promised Nigerians that 25 million trees are going to be planted in our fight, in our aim to mitigate climate change. I'm very certain that the airport road will be one of those areas that very beautiful ornamental trees will be planted to enhance the beauty of Abuja. Then the anonymous question about synergy. It's a problem that exists everywhere. But as we are advancing every day, and as we are living in a more globalized environment, I think those synergy issues are breaking down little by little. There are several laws that cross departments can use if they are well executed. A good example, which I am very conversant with, is the Environmental Impact Assessment Law. EIA is a multi-sectoral thing. And I would want to say that from my experience at the federal level, anytime the Federal Ministry of Works have very major projects at the planning stages, my ministry is involved, and it creates an opportunity for us to be able to, throw some light and then increase that synergy. Execution of the EIA law itself makes it possible for several disciplines to be involved in the project planning. So even though we don't know the state where the question is coming from, I think by the time we have more training programs and webinars of this nature, decision makers at these levels will see the need for enhanced and greater synergy between the various government departments and the professional bodies. Thank you, Mamoud. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abbas.
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Our national president, Mamoud, the organizers, more importantly, the birthday uncle. Congratulations, Dr. Wada and family. Thank you very much, Presenter Dr. Ijeoma, for a very beautiful presentation. I kept going up and on and off because I have some connectivity problem, but I have the privilege of going through the paper and discussing with you early in the week. Contributions also from Mr. Abbas and Professor Ogunleye has been very rich and very useful. Let me start with, I'm going to speak from the industrial perspective as somebody who works in industry. Today, what a day to mark World Environment Day. Most of you have heard this breaking news of the ship that capsized in Russia, where we have about 200,000 tons of diesel spilling into river. That is also affecting about 350 kilometers square of an area. The devastation, the impact on the biodiversity cannot be overemphasized, as we see. Biodiversity, the rich variety of living things, which has evolved over millions of years. From the discussion we have had so far, it's clear that everything we do has impact on biodiversity. Therefore, as the national president and Abbas has been shedding lights on synergy. Synergy is very important because all of us have to do something about this. The manufacturing concern provides for about 15% of the global GDP,
and employs about 23% of the employment globally. Both the producers and the importers have great impacts on biodiversity. As engineers in the plant, we are concerned about designing designing unit operations. Therefore, in the design itself, we could have impact on biodiversity because there are a lot of waste arisings, troubles, greenhouse emissions as a result of that activity. So I'm going to list out the issues, and then I can discuss what the industries are doing and what the industry will continue to do and what it must do newly. Of course, during the construction, you also have issues because the forest, the bushes are affected, the ecosystem is disturbed, waste is generated, greenhouse gases are emitted, effluents are also impacted. For an industry where I worked in the mining industry, lot of issues pertaining wildlife from the mining activities to the production, to packaging, to transport. There are a lot of impacts that can be seen and which requires a lot of attention and actions. And also, not only that, partnering with stakeholders to ensure that the biodiversity impact is mitigated. Together we can do a lot. If you look at what was happening today, what we need is to step up sustainability abilities. Yes, the Federal Ministry of Environment and Nature will facilitate conduction of very important EIA for companies, but very rich documents always end up in the shelf. They are not implemented. So this is where I think the regulators should be more of enablers and partners than just be regulators. How do we ensure that those rich studies, those mitigation actions that have been identified are implemented and are shared for synergy so that from one industry to another, we can be able to learn from each other and do it even better. So for mining, when you have for mining, we need to look at the way of ensuring that we have a sustainable planning in place that shows right from day minus one, we have a rehabilitation action plan in place. Not until mining has started. We need to ensure that we have a plan in place. As we mine, we should have a reclamation plan in place. We should have a rehabilitation plan in place, and also reintegration. This is very important. This can only happen if we have an environmental management system in place, which is all-encompassing to ensure that all environmental aspects and impacts are evaluated, are tracked, are monitored, and also actioned. So since items like energy audit is very important to show the impacts we have on biodiversity, on the ecosystem itself, and how it can be mitigated. This should be carried out frequently such that the actions can be sustained. Environmental audits are also very important, not only for regulatory, for compliance sake, but as a means of improving our production systems and also introducing our product quality of our products and mitigating our impacts on the environment. Socio-economic activities are important. Let me tell you a short story. We have a plant we have a facility in one of our plants. We carried out effluent test to qualified environmental consultant. What we found out was that upstream, the level of heavy metals was much higher, while downstream it is lower. So if this investigation had not been carried out, you wouldn't be able to know exactly where the source is. And by the time we are able to trace back, we discovered that the activities of a local community very close to the plant is in fact impacting more on the effluent on the company. So this is where such studies are important, and collaboration and awareness is also very important. environmental compliance monitoring, thank God the ministry have now made it a quarterly event. But I think it needs to be more, we need to be more proactive rather than a tick box to ensure that investigations are carried out, sustainable actions are put in place, and the ministry as enabler should be able to help the companies to ensure that, yes, actions are implemented such that the end results will be celebrated. One important aspect is about maintenance of our plant. It is very important that we keep to the defined regime of maintenance and ensure that we keep looking at the reliabilities of the plants and assessing the impacts in terms of greenhouse emissions, in terms of impact on soil, impact on water, and the general environment. This is very important because at the end of the day, whatever gets effluent may get into the water bodies, and organisms, species, thousands of kilometers away could be impacted, and biodiversity will be impacted therefore. So what I'm talking about is we need to also look at how to switch to more sustainable technologies. This is where partnership between the companies, the academia, society, and also regulators is very important. One other thing that they need to shed light on is the fact that the producer must be able to sit up and ensure that it has producer extended responsibility in terms of they are not just only pushing out the product to the community, to the buyer, but what happens to the waste generated, what happens to other environmental aspects that could impact on the environment are being tracked, and partnership is in place to ensure that they can be mitigated. I'm talking about, for instance, packaging materials. The most industrial manufacturing concerns now have seen the value of usage of waste as a fuel. Provides a lot of gigajoule of energy, and not only that, helps in cleaning the environment and supporting a lot of menaces that could impact the biodiversity. So we need to look at not only how we produce, how we transport, but how do we optimize transportation systems such that backhauls can be used to bring back waste that can serve as raw materials and alternative fuels to the plant. This is very important. So in a nutshell, what I'm talking about is stepping up sustainability abilities, where a synergy is driven between governments, societies, regulators, enablers, academia, and other manufacturing concerns. And of course, we should not forget our politicians who make the rules. And also professional bodies like Nigerian Society of Chemical Engineers. I believe together we can act for nature, we can act for biodiversity, we can act for events like this, the World Environment Day. Quality of life, of course, is dependent on quality of biodiversity. So what I would like to see is that we had a very beautiful paper presented. We had contributions from the academia. We had also contributions from the Federal Minister of Environment, and the National Society of Chemicals have also made contributions. What do we do from tomorrow? How do we move from action plan to actions? What can we do to ensure that regulators become enablers, other bodies are also partners, so that together we can be able to do a lot and improve the quality of life, which is dependent on quality of biodiversity. You will agree with me that the greatest threat to the planet is the belief that someone else will save it. We have to save it. We have to look at what we can do as individuals, as governments, as companies, as academicians, as regulators, so that fora like today will continue not only on environment days. I'm looking forward to say in the next quarter, we need to recapitulate what are the issues put on the table, what are we going to do, how are we going to support each other so that we can be able to save the biodiversity, and we can be able to make life better by making, which depends on the quality of biodiversity. Sorry, I kept going on and off because of connectivity. This much I can contribute. I believe it's a very important session that all of us have attended. If we take the notes back and implement some of the silent actions and issues that are raised, I'm sure the world will be better tomorrow and next. Thank you very much.
I said, on behalf of the chapter, we are very grateful to everyone that has participated in this public lecture. First, we give thanks to our national president. He is always there for us. We are blessed having our national chairman in this very chapter. National chairman, thank you for coming. Secondly, I want to thank the guest speaker, Dr. Ijeoma. You've really done justice to this very lecture. We are grateful to you. Thank you for coming. Our discussants, I want to say you've done marvelously well. All the three of you, even Tukur, that was our issue. You are really, master of this very subject. So thank you very much for coming. And to the listeners, even the ones I am not seeing on my screen, I thank you all. Thank you very much. Over now to the chairman of the occasion.
Thank you very much. I highly esteemed lecturer and discussants, and above all, our patient audience. Also, thanks to our mentor celebrant, Dr. Wada. You have remained, as I've always said, a source of inspiration to all of us. On behalf of the Board and Council of Nigerian Society of Chemical Engineers, I believe we are very, very much appreciative of this opportunity to engage ourselves as professionals and share knowledge in a topic area that is very, very important to our very existence. It is one topic area that no matter how hard we work, there is always much more work to be done. The impact of our environment, the complaints of our environment in the way that we have been exploiting nature resources is pretty much obvious to us. It is only through knowledge, deepening knowledge in trying to understand the environment itself, that we can find a much more sustainable way to live in our environment. Nothing is more urgent than that. Just taking resources or implementing development projects only to find that we are wreaking havoc should not be the way. I believe that we should rejig our education and indeed our overall approach so that the interaction with our environment will become proactive rather than reactive. Reactive interaction is not sustainable. Only proactive interaction can be sustainable. So once again, on behalf of Nigerian Society of Chemical Engineers and our very vibrant FCT Nasarawa Chapter, I want to thank our esteemed audience for the patience, and for listening. Thank you all.